This book has destroyed me. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Sunrise on the Reaping connections to the original Hunger Games trilogy, and I'm going to lose my mind because I'm obsessed with this series. It all started when I was like 13 and it never went away. My obsession stayed. Everyone else was like, yeah, I grew out of it. No, I'm still here. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about how Haymitch literally had a friendship with Katniss's dad. Sorry. I'm totally normal. But yes, Haymitch and Katniss's dad, Burdock Everdeen, were best friends in their childhood. I was shook by this because it's never mentioned in the original trilogy. They basically had a falling out because after Haymitch won his game, Snow literally unalived his family and Lenore Dove, his girlfriend. And I will never forgive him for that. Haymitch was so afraid of losing more people, he literally pushed everyone that he cared about away. And he threw rocks at them, literally, to get them to stay away from him. Burdock stayed by his side as long as he could until Haymitch ended up injuring Katniss's mom, Astrid March, who ended up being Astrid Everdeen. After that, Burdock kept his distance, but unfortunately he ended up passing away due to the mining accident when Katniss was only 11. So even though Haymitch and Katniss didn't officially meet until she volunteered for Prem, we now know from the book that Haymitch was watching her from a distance as she grew up, and so he wasn't just mentoring any other tribute, like this was his childhood best friend's kid. Ugh. Suzanne, why? The next connection we have is how Haymitch's girlfriend is literally related to Katniss. So in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we learn about the Covey. They were musicians by trade and they were known for their love of travel, bright colors, and music. A few years before the 10th Hunger Games, they were all rounded up and they were forced to settle in the districts or they'd be unalived. A member of the Covey is Lucy Gray. She won the 10th Hunger Games and was the first tribute from District 12 to win. Young Coriolanus mentored her in the games, they fell in love, and then she disappeared, and it literally haunts him till the day he dies, and he makes it everybody in Panem's problem. In Sunrise on the Reaping, it turns out that Burdock Everdeen has distant cousins who were Covey on his mother's side. This is making Katniss a distant Covey descendant, and Haymitch's girlfriend Lenore Dove was part of the next generation of the Covey, so they're both connected to that. Katniss doesn't know about like her Covey roots in the original trilogy, but in the epilogue of Sunrise on the Reaping, Haymitch tells her all about Lenore Dove. Katniss gives him a gift of goose eggs to let him know how much she knows that Lenore Dove meant to him. So although Haymitch had lost that connection with Burdock Everdeen, the epilogue shows that he still formed a connection with his family. Guys. Next, let's talk about how Haymitch's nickname for Katniss has a sentimental history. So in the original trilogy, Haymitch calls Katniss sweetheart, and at first Katniss hates it, but then over time she warms up to it. As a kid, Haymitch had a neighbor, Luella McCoy, and she called herself Haymitch's sweetheart. Although she moved on like a week later, Haymitch kept the nickname and always thought of her as a little sister. Luella ended up being reaped with Haymitch, but she was unalived before they even made it to the arena. Years later, Haymitch meets Katniss, a girl from the Seam who's tough and smart. She wears her hair in braids like Luella, and he can't help but see the resemblance. And so the nickname Sweetheart just slips out. Next, let's talk about how Haymitch and Katniss had similar reaping stories. In the original Hunger Games, Katniss volunteers as tribute for her sister Prem when she's reaped. Katniss is like known for being one of the only volunteers in District 12. So I was shook when I realized Haymitch wasn't even reaped for the Hunger Games either. Another boy, Woodbine, was reaped and he ran and the peacekeeper shot him. When Lenore Dove tried to help Woodbine's mother, Haymitch jumped in to protect Lenore Dove, and his interference led him to be selected as the male tribute. And this connection is crazy because years later, Katniss interferes with the peacekeeper to stop them from whipping her friend Gale. And then Haymitch stepped in to protect Katniss, and that resulted in him getting reaped and catching fire. So this man interfered with a peacekeeper twice, and he got reaped twice. Next, we're going to talk about how the Mockingjay pin is connected to Haymitch's past. The Mockingjay pin that Katniss wears in the original trilogy is owned by Maysilee Donner, who I freaking love. She is my favorite character in the new book. She was Haymitch's ally in the games, and Joanna and her would have gotten along so well. This girl had the sass, she had the attitude, and I loved it. So this Mockingjay pin was made by Tam Amber, a Covey musician, and that makes the symbol that much more meaningful. Maysilee actually didn't like the Mockingjay design. She's like, girl, that's ugly. She tried to get Tam Amber to melt it down into something prettier, but he refused. She kept it in her drawer, and it later became the symbol for the second rebellion against the Capitol, which is crazy. I love that. bad. Next, let's talk about Katniss and Haymitch's scores in training. I found it so funny that Haymitch got the lowest score out of all the tributes and Katniss got the highest score out of all the tributes. And they were both for like rebellious reasons. So Haymitch got a 1 for his training, which is the lowest score possible. He gets the score because he goes into training, he doesn't show his skills. When they ask him if he thinks he can win the games, he's like, well, 31 people have promised to defend me, so, but maybe that strategy is a little subtle for you. And then leaves. And then Katniss gets her 11 in training by shooting an apple out of a pig's mouth in the feast that they're having because she gets so annoyed because she's showing her archery skills and they're not even freaking paying attention to her. She's like, my life's on the line. And she ate that up. Next, let's talk about how Haymitch and Katniss had support from the same allies. Haymitch had help from his mentors Mags and Wyrus from Catching Fire. When I tell you I almost threw this book. Suzanne. What are you doing to me? And he also worked closely with Beetee. And then years later in Catching Fire, Mags, Wyrus, and Beetee are forced back into the arena and they form an alliance with Katniss. I just find it so funny how stupid Snow is to let all of them in the arena with Katniss, who rebelled in her first games. What an idiot. Okay. Last, let's talk about how Haymitch tried to destroy the arena first. So as we know, Katniss, the iconic character she is, destroys the arena in Catching Fire. But Sunrise on the Reaping shows that Haymitch actually tried to do it first. So Haymitch is in the 50th Hunger Games. It's the Quarter Quell, which means things are fancy, so he has to literally go up against 47 other tributes instead of 23. Before his games, Haymitch and Beetee come up with a plan to blow up the arena with a bomb. But sadly, the generators stop the arena from failing. But of course, Katniss comes through and she breaks the arena without even knowing the plan in Catching Fire. And that just shows like how similar they are, honestly. Like they both wanted to break the arena. They both were so done with the Capitol. And this kind of ties back to the end of the novel when Plutarch is talking to Haymitch in the Victory Tour, and Haymitch is distraught from losing everybody he loves, and he's like, if you want to overthrow the Capitol, you need to find someone different than me. But Plutarch is like, no, we need someone exactly like you, just maybe luckier with better timing. And that was Katniss. That was Katniss! So glad I was able to discuss this with you guys. Suzanne is a mastermind. I was rereading the original trilogy and the connections are insane. If you guys think of any more connections, comment them down below. I'm sure I've missed some. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. Can you tell it's like 2 a.m.? Can you tell? I think you can. See you guys next time.